Hey free-to-play gang, welcome back to another video. Congratulations for clicking on this video. You just saved yourself some brain cells because right now I'm going to explain to you what is the best use of tracks of the lost. Tracks of the lost, yes. I'm not going to be talking about the album of the lost because you can generally just pull very end game stuff and probably for a different topic on a different day as well. But for today, I'm only going to focus on tracks of the lost, and there are so many good items that you can purchase over here, right? If you want to increase your resonance level, if you want to increase your insight, you can do so by buying a bunch of these items that will help you in your progress. Or if you want to get more summons, you can always buy the Unilog. But what is actually the best use of your currency, because this currency is extremely limited. Now, before we get into the math, let's actually take a look at how we can obtain the tracks of the lost. So there are two main ways. Number one is via the weekly activeness, and number two is via summons. So I've gone ahead to pen everything down in an Excel spreadsheet. You can see over here, weekly activeness, you can get up to 150 tracks of the lost per week. So total payout per week would be 60 plus 90, 150. Total payout per month would be 600. We are going to revisit all these numbers later on. Okay, so take note that we can get 600 just by doing weeklies. And then taking a look at the summons over here, there are a few ways that we can obtain tracks of the lost, but we are only going to focus on a basic assumption over here. I'm just going to briefly show you what happens when you get duplicate characters, right? That is how you can either get albums of the lost or tracks of the lost, as you can see over here. Now, you might also notice that there are different amounts of tracks of the lost that you can obtain each time. Same for the albums of the lost, depending on how many copies of that one character you already own. So if you already have that character fully portrayed, then you're going to obtain more of the corresponding item. So because of that, we're going to make a general assumption here, which is, let's say you've been playing this game for months or maybe a year or something like that, right? So this is the basic assumption. You will have every 6-star and every 5-star character, which is not relevant. It's not relevant for this topic, and I'll explain in just a little bit. And you also have maxed portrait 2 to 4-star characters. I think this is actually very doable. So the reason why I say 6 and 5-star characters, they are not relevant, is because they only drop albums of the lost, which is irrelevant for today's topic. We only care about the tracks of the lost, which I think is actually very doable. Like I said, max portrait 2 to 4-star characters. So the probability of summoning a 4-star dupe would be 40%, the probability of summoning a 3-star dupe would be 45%, and the probability of summoning a 2-star dupe is actually 5%. And here are the corresponding tracks of the lost that you can obtain if you get a dupe of that character. So the expected tracks of the lost per summon is actually just combining all of these rates, multiplying them according to the number of tracks of the lost that they can afford you, and that would be 8.2 tracks of the lost per summon on average. So what this means is if you summon 100 times, you should be able to get 820 tracks of the lost. Now, some of you guys might be asking, okay, I'm free to play, then how does that affect the total number of tracks of the lost that I can get per month? So I've done a calculation excluding events, excluding maybe like maintenance jams or something like that, clear drops. So the total clear drops a month that we can obtain right now, and kudos to you if you know what these numbers are and where to obtain these numbers, leave your comment down below. So by right, from my estimation over here, we should get 4,480 clear drops a month, completely free to play, which I would think most of you guys are going to translate it into summons, which means total summons per month, excluding the bank. And why I exclude the bank is because you can get more summons over here, but we need this as part of our calculation, so we're going to exclude it for this calculation. We don't want to have a circle reference. So that would be in total per month, excluding events, excluding freebies, excluding gift codes, almost 25 summons free to play. 25. So sidetrack, in order for us to PT, it's going to take about 2 months plus. Okay, so that means the total tracks of the lost per month by summons alone is going to be 204. Essentially, we just multiply 24.889 by 8.2, which is the expected amount of tracks per lost per summon. So tracks per lost per summon times the total number of summons would give you the total number of tracks per lost per month. Yes. So that will be 204, and we're going to add it with the 600 here. So we can actually obtain 804 tracks of the lost per month. I think that's basically like the conclusion. But that's not all. That's not all, because right now we are only figuring out how many tracks of the lost we get per month. But we also need to take a look at how valuable each of these items are, which is the whole point of this video. And you're going to understand why I brought up the topic of tracks of the lost in just a little bit. Now, before we proceed, a lot of effort was put into this video by scouring data and information from various websites to make it as concise and as simple as possible. Now, if you were to find this video helpful, please consider dropping a like for visibility and to subscribe to see more math, I guess. Regardless, I'm thankful that you even stayed to this point of the video, so let's move on. So I've gone ahead to draft up a very ugly table, so don't mind me. So the items that you can see on the left are whatever that you can buy from the pawn shop. So for example, the Unilock is going to cost you 60 tracks of the lost. The Sharper Dante is going to cost you 20 tracks of the lost. The Dust is going to cost you 15 tracks of the lost. Yada yada yada. I've gone ahead to value each of them in terms of activeness. And why I say activeness is because, for example, Sharper Dante, you can farm this via the Mintage Aesthetics map, which you can see the math over here. It's going to give you 9,000 per run. So we're actually going to convert the value of this Sharper Dante, 5,000, into its relevant activeness. And the reason for that is because we can then convert it into clear drops, because 100 activeness is equal to 60 clear drops, assuming that you refill only once per day, and that will give us a clear drops value per tracks of the lost. So I hope this is clear. This gives us 13.9 activeness worth of Sharper Dantes, and 13.9 activeness worth of Sharper Dantes will be translated into 8.33 clear drops. And the cost of this, right, because this costs us 20 tracks of the lost, the clear drops per tracks of the lost would then be 8.33 divided by 20, which means this gives us a final value of 0.42 with regards to the Sharper Dante item over here. And that is not very good, because if we take a look at Unilock, for example, the value in activeness, there is none because you cannot actually farm it, but the value in clear drops is very clearly 180, right? Clearly, yes. Which means the clear drops per track of the lost is 3, because 180 divided by 60, that gives us 3. So the Unilock is actually the best value for money in terms of whatever that you can buy from this shop. But that is also not all. So I went ahead to calculate, for example, the Enlighten 2, and the way I did it is to just calculate the total number of EXP, or rather the Psycube EXP, that we can obtain by doing one single run, and then valuing the Enlighten 2 item over here because it drops twice, valuing this amount according to whatever that we can get by farming it directly. That is 2,200 EXP per Numa 7 clear. So yada yada yada, that's going to give us a value of 0.55. And as for the LF and MF polarization, which are these two items over here, we can actually obtain them via the fragment shop, but the material that is required to buy them is actually not farmable. Let's take a look. So over at the fragment shop, you can see all the way at the bottom here, we can use this particular currency, the thought element, but the way that you can farm this is not by grinding the Numa analysis. The way that you can actually obtain this is by doing Numa analysis twice per day. That's how you get this currency. So it's not farmable. On the other hand, the thought in entirety is completely farmable. You get about 2 per run in Numa 7. So that means these two items are actually worth indefinitely, so they're actually very valuable. Now, as for the rest of all these blue tiered materials, I have also valued them in activeness based on their drop chances. And if you want to know how to get them, I will link a video up in the top. You can go ahead and check it out. So the Solidus is going to be the most valuable, followed by the Liquefied Terror, followed by the Milled Magnesia, and afterwards everything else is just a lot less valuable. And I'm not even going to consider the Trembling Tooth all the way to the Spell of Banishing because these are just not very worth it. Now, so the reason why I am doing this is of course to give you guys an idea of what is the best use of your Tracks of the Lost. And right now you already know it's going to be a Unilock, but we did also calculate the total number of Tracks of the Lost that we are supposed to get every month free to play. And the reason for that is to understand whether we have enough currency as a free to play to clear out the shop in terms of whatever that we need. So take a look. If you scroll it down here, I have this little hidden thing. So Tracks of the Lost per month would be 600 plus 204, which is 804. And the Unilocks to buy from the shop is actually 804 divided by 60 because one Unilock costs 60 Tracks of the Lost. So we can actually afford 13.4 Unilocks per month free to play. But also note that there is a total of 10 monthly limit over here. So we actually have 3.4 excess currency, which is about 190, to use on other things as well. So you can, as a free-to-play, completely clear out the shop in terms of all the Unilocks, and on top of that, you can also buy, I don't know, whatever that you need, right? Which in my mind is probably going to be the Solidus, Liquefied Terror, or the Milled Magnesia. And let's say you're going for the Liquefied Terror, right? You can actually buy more than 10 copies of the Liquefied Terror this way for you to raise your characters of their resonance and their insight levels. So that's it for this video. Hopefully this helped you in some way. If it did, don't click the thumbs up. It really helps the channel, and subscribe for more Reverse 999 content. Now with that said, this has been Derek Free to Play, and as always, I will see you in the next video.